Hi, this is Alora, and today we're going to discuss a little bit about Freddie Prinze Jr. and Han Solo's story arc in the new lore. And first of all, let's just go ahead and get down with Freddie Prinze's ordeal, his mental breakdown. Okay, I waited. I was going to do a video last night, and I waited because not only did I want to just fully dissect the video myself, I needed to chill. And his irate tantrum was very palpable, and you can just feel that energy coming through at you. And all I can say is that what he has to say does not make the fandom, does not make Star Wars, and does not mean that he is the all authority to the lore. And secondly, his take on white fans wanting the Falcon basically makes him look like an ass and sounding off like a jerk, because the fandom is not one single race and one single gender. And so this makes him come off as clearly racist, especially, and also sexist, because he's stating that those white men are pissed off that a woman was handed the Falcon. First of all, Han did not give her the Falcon. Basically, she took it, just like everything else that she got was not even a proper hand down that we see in the movies and even in the original EU. And he also says fans are outraged at the new emerging lore because they don't understand what Star Wars is about. And I clearly can say that the reason that we are upset, outraged, whatever you want to say, the level of dislike, I guess you can say, is not because we do not understand the lore. It's because we do. We understand it through watching the 6 movies and also being an EU fan. So there's clearly a lot of history going on that went back 25 plus centuries that we understand. And so to say that and judge everybody on the same tier, because everybody has their likes and dislikes when it comes to Star Wars and how they understand it, especially the Force, clearly shows that he doesn't understand his fan base. That Luke did not learn how to use the Force under one time frame. So basically it took Luke 3 movies to get to the skill level we see him in Return of the Jedi, and he still wasn't masterful, and not like we see today with Mary Sue. He still got his ass beat. He did overcome Vader a little bit, but that was a little bit of induced rage or fear, and he stopped himself because he realized that he was at a pivotal moment of crossing that line. And then his training expands into the EU, and we still see him succeeding, yet still being defeated, trials and tribulations. In fact, I used an example of Exar Kun putting him in a coma, and when he began his training facility on Yavin. Okay. And then also he refers to Obi-Wan and Yoda as the fairy godmothers to Luke. And that is such a wrong example. He clearly says that we need to understand the mythology, the hero's journey. And that's not a good example of the hero's journey. What is a good example is that, looking at, if you want to refer to Disney, since this is now a Disney-owned property, is Sword of the Stone. And when you read Star Wars, the myth of, or magic of myth, it clearly, uses Sword of the Stone as one of the examples of the talus being handed down to the heir. And that's, the talus is the saber and the heir is Luke Skywalker. And with the new one, there is no heir of receiving that lightsaber. And so there goes the lore in there, and there goes the mythology in there. And Obi-Wan and Yoda are mentors. They're not fairy godparents or mothers, because Luke is never handed, and his journey is not made simple. Like, they make their journey simple. He doesn't make a wish and wish that he can be something. In fact, he was denying being a Jedi at first. So again, that goes back to the hero's journey. So I recommend Freddie to look in the Star Wars mythology here, the book that I just seen here, and refer to the many pages in here when it comes to the Force, the light and the dark side. And let me see if I could find it real quick. I should have had it marked, but I didn't think about using. So I'm just going to read this one. It's not really necessary to the Force, but just the overall, what we're talking about, myths, the mythos, the hero's journey. Myths are made not just of classic recurring themes, but of the specific context out of which they spring. The Star Wars saga tells a timeless story of a hero's journey to fulfill his destiny and conquer those forces of darkness. Okay, so this doesn't refer to like the Disney princess thing at all. It is distinctly a myth of the late 20th century, and so we need to look at the other stories that we were being told and at the stories that history was in the process of writing when Star Wars came into being. Some of these elements may have a conscious influence on George Lucas as he created the Star Wars scripts. Others are simply part of the general context in which the story appeared, having an impact on viewers instead. So that tells it all. And so we're going to go into him using George's and Filoni's name as part of his statement, his argument, I guess you can say. And you can quote, or you can say, so-and-so says it this way, but if you don't have any facts to back yourself up, and you don't have and you can't provide that other than say they said it, that's just being your account, which that's like how the rumors start. You could tell someone something, and then by the time it gets to the fifth person, it's totally misconstrued. But if you don't have the facts in front of you where you can base it off saying this quote from this source, then it's irrelevant. And so I'm trying to keep my knowledge for my channel up based upon researching. Like I said, I annotate, and I also, show that, actions speak louder than words. We know George Lucas says one thing and another thing happens. We also know that Filoni has went against George's word many times, and he even states in interviews that he does. And he also went against the lore group. And then we'll talk about a little bit more about the Force. Force is about light versus dark. Light is the balance. Dark is the unnatural, unbalanced. And that's basically what the lore is about. And so we're seeing it changed in Disney, Lucasfilm, and if that's the direction they're going, that's probably one reason why many of us don't care for the direction that they're taking this, is because the whole overall arc of the Force is light versus dark, and light is the balance, and dark is the unnatural, so it's not the balance. And this book here, if you read through here, will describe it a little bit more. I wish I would have bookmarked the page so I can read it to you. Let's see here. I don't want to make this too long because we have another thing we need to get into. So I probably won't find it, so I won't waste time on that. So please, I recommend this book. It's a great addition to your Star Wars collection, especially when we have issues like this. All right, so the fallacies that he used in his statement or his rant, his breakdown, one is ad hominem or a personal attack. And that's the basis of his overall argument, is that he set out to attack the fans. He didn't set out to make a reasonable conversation saying, hey, let's talk about this. What's going on? Now, should he? I don't know. But the thing is if you're going to go ahead and address something, let's talk about it, you know? Deliberate ignorance, I don't want to hear it. So basically he does not want to hear it, and he wants to state what he wants to say without even like sitting down and talking it out. He's right, we're wrong. Gaslighting. So basically he is going with blind loyalty. Straw manning, just because, you know, so he's just because he doesn't like the new movie, or just because we don't like the new movies, we must not know anything about the lore. And so that's what he's saying is our reason isn't valid, that we don't know anything. So why should we make such a statement of like, we don't like what's going on with the lore or character or whatever? We have no clue. Now, lastly, he has an argument from authority. So he uses George Lucas's name and he uses Filoni's name, but he does not use any facts or anything. He just clearly says, puts their name in there because he feels like once he does that, he has the authority to make this statement, and because of them. But he doesn't provide any reasonable conclusions to them. And so those are the fallacies. And so to me, that does not give him any right, or I wouldn't even say right. It doesn't make a good basis of an argument, and he doesn't create a conversation. So now let's go on to Han Solo. And this one is a little bit more, now this is going to him saying, we do not understand the lore. And if we didn't understand the lore, then we wouldn't be pissed off at this development here, because we do understand what's the hell's going on. All right. So Han Solo's character is portrayed inside the novel Force Collector. The main protagonist in this novel is Kar Nugson. And this is about a Force sensitive who is a collector, and the title is called Force Collector. So this person is Force sensitive who wants to learn how they fit in the scheme of things as a Force sensitive, and wants to learn more about the lore. And this is in 34 ABY, so this is probably around the time Luke dissipates into the Force. And so he has no clue what's going on with himself. He doesn't understand the Force very well. So that's my understanding. This novel is now out in the UK, and it came out on the 4th of October, and the novel will come out November here in the United States. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. So in the book, it states that Han has Luke's medal, and he trades it for alcohol. And I say this goes against the character, because Han may be a smuggler, but he has a heart of gold. We see that in the movies, and we see that in the EU. Once he puts you into his immediate circle, because he does not trust people at first, and that's okay. But once he puts you in his immediate circle, then you're there, and he will protect you. He will take care of you. And because he never had a family, he never knew his family. And in the EU, he got to know his cousin and his aunt, and that turned out very tragic. And that expands more, you know, like into the Corellian trilogy. And I recommend reading that, because then you can understand Han a little bit more when it comes to his Solo lineage. So in the book, Han gives Maz Kanata, you know, the medal to pay for alcohol. Maz calls him a bastard. Now, I'm not very sure, but I'm maybe 90 or 85% sure, and anybody who is well knowledge in the EU let me know too as well. And let me know what source it is, because I want to know exactly too, so I can keep that from my knowledge. Is Mouse calls him a bastard, and I don't know, I've never heard anybody been called like a plain English bad name. It's always had its own translation into the language that fits the universe, like Bantapoo, you know. So I mean, that's just a nitpick, but I'm just very curious about that, because you know, it's the lore is changing, the verbiage is changing, and it just feels too here on Earth in our own reality kind of language, you know. So, but in there they have him as shady, and I've never seen Han as shady. I have always seen him as noble, as very cautious, as calculating, wants to do the right thing. That's why he wants to square his deal with Jabba. Even in the EU, he was always taking care of his debts and protecting his family. And one very important thing that's inside the lore, I think it's not crucible. Anyways, Han had everybody in this bubble that he thought that it was him, his family, Luke, Chewie, and he always seen them, and no, it's in the new Jedi Order trilogy, and he's always seen himself, and I think it might be Vector Prime after Chewie's death, it is, and but he always seen them as protected in this bubble, that nothing can happen to them until Chewie dies, and he realizes that they can all go one day, and that scares the hell out of him. And so I cannot see him being shady. All right. And they say that he's acting this way too because his marriage with Leia and his son turning to the dark side. So he decided to go back to his old ways, which we've seen in The Force Awakens, which does not make sense. Hence what I just stated just a few minutes ago. And so this is kind of upsetting a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot for me. That's why I'm staying in the original EU. And now let's go into the Force. So we'll go into the Force of things, and and this kind of refers back to Freddie Prince's thing. In this book, it says that the Force user knows they have the Force because they get headaches. And then, of course, Force visions. Okay, so please, any EU experts out there, I have never heard of this, so correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know if there's anything in the lore about Force sensitives and Force users getting headaches just simply because of the Force, or that they are Force sensitive, because that does not make sense. Okay, well, anyways, so that's my take on that. I do not agree with this new revelation on Han's character, and this is around 34 ABY. So either Han is still alive or dead, because this is right around The Force Awakens, if you know the timeline. Yeah. So thank you for tuning in with me, and may the Force be with you.